west of Orange Mission 422. Without tri-state delays are Southwest Highway to 75th, to the Stevenson to 47th, the Reagan Tollway to the Grand Avenue Curve, but Reagan Tollway is heavy Farnsworth to Eola. That's traffic. I'm Jim Talamonte on AM 560 The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next in our 1 hour heating and air conditioning weather center. Breezy this morning, then clouds and sun through the afternoon. A high near 51, clear and 33 overnight. Passing flurry tomorrow, otherwise variable clouds, and 49. Currently, we have 33 degrees. Your next news update is at 8. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. So, Caesar Mike had a town hall, Fox News, last night, and our friend Brett Baer hosting with Martha McCallum, and he got a pointed question on guns. This was a good one. And then it got a little rowdy.
How do you justify pushing for more gun control when you have an armed security detail that is likely equipped with the same firearms and magazines that you seek to ban the common citizen from owning? Does your life matter more than mine or my family's or these people's?
All right. Yes, it does.
Look, I probably get 40 or 50 threats every week, okay? And some of them are real. That just happens when you're the mayor of New York City or you're very wealthy and if you're campaigning for President of the United States, you get lots of threats. So I have a security detail. I pay for it all myself. And, they're all retired police officers who are very well trained in firearms. Let me talk about firearms for a second. The Second Amendment gives you the right to bear arms. Nobody suggests that we're going to change the Constitution. Even if you wanted to, I don't think you'd get it done. So nobody's going to take away your right to bear arms. The Supreme Court said you can have reasonable restrictions. And the only restrictions which I'm in favor of is to prevent us from selling guns to people with psychiatric problems, criminals, or people that are minors, okay? And the federal law, right now, if you go into a gun store, that law applies to all gun stores across America.
Uh-huh. Is that the full picture of Bloomberg's position? No, not exactly. But before we get to tackling his statement, then this happened.
All right, we're going to move. All right, hold on.
Okay.
Sir,
We're going to keep this.
Are those liberties available? I'm sorry to interrupt you guys. Are those liberties
Thank you.
available in New York?
Bears,
No, you guys, we don't
got
protest.
taken
We don't
over.
do that. Yes, we do.
Oh, sure they
We're
did.
gonna-
All right.
Hold on.
Stop.
All right. We're going to get these
We're going
guys.
to take a quick break.
Tell you what, we're going to take a quick break. And we'll be
Yeah, we're going to be back in 2 and 2.
Yeah, I had to throw it
we're
to a
gonna-
little Chuck Woolery commercial break, right? See how the date ends. Anyway, so that's unnecessary. And, I mean, come on. I understand people are passionate about particular issues, but you don't be disruptive in a forum. That's what the left does. It's silly. However, Bloomberg is being disingenuous about his real attitude toward guns when it comes to, I just want to do this. He also wants to remove liability protection to open up a whole new avenue for trial lawyers with respect to gun owners to try and put them out of business financially through litigation, through the courts, what he can't do through legislatures. He's also made pronouncements in the past that suggest he's opposed to right to carry, which I know now is a matter the high court has ruled on, so that's not going to work. But just in terms of his attitude, don't think that he's just reasonable restrictions, Mr. Everytown. He is a gun banner at its heart. In his heart, it's clear from statements he's made and positions he's taken over many years that he believes that only police should have guns. Right. He doesn't believe law-abiding people should be allowed to protect themselves, particularly outside their home. That's fact. And so, Bloomberg, how does Bloomberg or any of these individuals set up for today's Super Tuesday primary, but also for the general election in states with starting tonight, in some states with more conservative Democrats, a la South Carolina, a la Texas, for example, and Florida.
O'Rourke is, supporting Biden as well as Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar.
Bobby O'Rourke would have problems getting his congressional seat back, much less does he have any swag in Texas.
He took him on. He's like, you want to endorse me? Come to Dallas, speak with me. And then he spoke with him, and then they went to Whataburger.
The man in the White House today poses an existential threat to this country, to our democracy, to free and fair elections. And we need somebody who can beat him. And in Joe Biden, we have that man.
Yeah, it's real powerful stuff. Very, very Bobby.
All the Texans are going to rush to Biden.
Very Bobby Kennedy-esque. Chuck DeVore is the vice president of national initiatives at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, former California legislator, special assistant for foreign affairs in the Reagan-era Pentagon, and a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army, U.S. Army Reserve, who is retired. And he joins us again now. Chuck, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Hey, great to be with you again.
So, with respect to, forget this Bobby O sideshow. Just with respect to Texas, right now, even though that one would think that outside of Austin, that the Texas Democrat primary voter would be a little bit more on the conservative side, Bernie Sanders has not a commanding lead, but a lead going into tonight.
He does, but there's a big difference between Texas, the lay of the land now versus 2016. In 2016, it was just a mano a mano race between Sanders and Hillary Clinton, and Sanders ended up getting 46% in 2016. The big difference now is that you've got a pretty heavily split primary, and you're likely going to see both Biden and Bloomberg break the 15% threshold needed to get delegates. And I really doubt that Sanders is going to do as well as he did in 2016, just because the rest of the vote's going to be split off between these other candidates. I would expect that he'll get the plurality in Texas, but he's not going to hit the same mark that he did 4 years ago. I just don't.
Well, sure, and he doesn't need to really. I mean, with how he is positioned around the country, including in your former home state of California, where he's effectively lapping the field at this point.
Right, and he is going to do well in California. I mean, that is his base, right? It's the white, non-Hispanic, woke base, and that's where he's going to do very well in California. The other thing that is going to help him in California is that you probably already have 70 to 75% of the votes that have already been cast, and so most of those votes were done before Joe Biden did well in South Carolina, before a lot of these folks have dropped out. And so you're going to see probably Bernie Sanders do much better in California than he did in 2016. But I think the bigger story that we're seeing here is the de facto coalescing of the Democrat establishment behind Joe Biden as a way to stop Bernie Sanders. I mean, that's pretty apparent.
Right.
And I think that go ahead.
No. Finish your statement. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Well, and I think that the reason why that's important is that, Bernie Sanders has to get 50% plus one of the delegates on the first round. Otherwise, those superdelegates get freed up. And at that point, they're going to vote for anyone not named Bernie Sanders.
And there's 415 delegates in California, 228 in Texas. But Minnesota, I mean, Biden's really hoping to get those 75 delegates in Minnesota because of Amy Klobuchar's endorsement. Do you see that happening?
Well, that's another interesting thing, right? So in Minnesota, they don't have as much early voting as they do in Texas, where there's already been 1 million votes cast in the Democratic primary, or in California, where it's about 3/4 of the votes already cast. Minnesota is more of a traditional vote on election day state. And so the question is, when you have someone popular, a native daughter, as it were, running and who might have gotten the plurality, and she's throwing her support to Joe Biden, some of that's going to transfer over, but some of those people are just probably going to stay home because they were enthusiastic to vote for their local senator, and may not be so for someone else.
Or some of those people are going to vote for their second choice, which turns out to be Bernie Sanders in many instances. I mean, Mayor Pete supporters, their second choice by a narrow margin, but their second choice nonetheless is Bernie Sanders. So turning them out, what do you make it up on volume? I mean, the way this is reported, and you know this as a candidate, there's the press corps gives way too much weight to politicians endorsing other politicians. They behave like Amy Klobuchar owns Democrat primary voters in Minnesota, which is absurd.
Right, that's a good point. The other thing I think is fascinating is if you look at the 2016 race, Bernie Sanders consistently underperformed his polling. So whatever the poll average was in the state, he usually did about 2 to 3, 4 points less than that. The big difference between then and now is that Sanders has invested a lot of money and a lot of effort in organization. So instead of just a bunch of enthusiastic young kids helping him, he's brought in some pretty sophisticated professionals on board, and they've really worked hard at organizing. And so you may now start to see Sanders perform as well as the polls.
Give us a handle on Texas for the general, because I know you've written about this, the concern about the push for persons in this country illegally to vote, and otherwise just the election integrity issues associated with Democrats. We're very familiar with those issues in Cook County and Chicago. The story the media is hoping to tell, that Texas is in play, that Texas could be flipped because of the burgeoning Latino population, and that really hasn't borne out the way that they have hoped thus far. But do you have serious concerns about that in 20?
Well, to be frank and very quick, no, I don't. Trump won Texas by 9 points in 2016 in the general. He didn't do all that well throughout the South because he's a Yankee, right? He's from New York City. And a lot of Southerners were skeptical of the guy. Well, now he's got a track record, and that track record is pretty attractive. It's pretty attractive to a lot of Southerners, right? And so I would expect that Trump's going to win Texas by double digits upcoming.
And down ballot, because there's some key retirements and key congressional seats at stake.
Right. So the down ballot, you alluded to some challenges with election integrity, and what we are seeing in Texas is a tremendous amount of money that's been spent over the years by Tom Steyer and now Michael Bloomberg and George Soros and national unions, and they've been putting a lot of effort into organizing Texas. And by my calculation, you're likely going to see about 1.2 million mail-in ballots in November that will be cast by people who probably aren't legally allowed to mail in their ballot in Texas. Texas law says you got to be 65 and older, you got to be out of the county on Election Day, or you have to have a disability. And what the data suggests, what the statistics show, is that there's this surge in people under the age of 65, mostly around college age, that are claiming a disability so as to vote from home or vote from their dorm room. And you can do that in California. It's perfectly legal there. But in Texas, that's a problem. And it's further a problem if you find that campaigns or third-party organizations are the ones organizing this and checking that disability box for the voter. The reason why they want to do it is they want to guarantee that vote. They want to bank that vote. And the problem, of course, is that that's illegal under Texas law. You're not supposed to do that.
So what is the Republican Party there doing about that sort of ballot harvesting gambit?
Well, it's difficult from a partisan standpoint to do anything. If you make too much of a fuss about it, the other side's going to try to hit you with a voting rights lawsuit and claim that you're trying to suppress the vote. So what really needs to happen is the Attorney General and local DAs need to look into this. And at the state level, Attorney General Ken Paxton now has 5 people dedicated to tracking down allegations of voter fraud, which is up from only 1 in past election cycles. So they are putting more resources behind it. They do have 38 active cases that they're pursuing, going after election integrity issues, going after people who have committed crimes with regard to our election process. So it's a good start, but it's a big state. So 5 people, better than 1 person. I'd like to see more resources dedicated to ensuring that our elections are free and fair.
He is Chuck DeVore, Vice President of National Initiatives at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, former California legislator. Chuck, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to podcasts of Dan and Amy from the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Balance of nature. Changing the world, one life at a time.
I love the
product. I absolutely love the product. It's amazing, and I'm sure you hear all kinds of great reviews, but I put my mom on it. I put another friend of mine, everybody that I talked to about it. I said, listen, you need to take this. It's amazing. It has helped me. My blood pressure was terrible. My energy was really low. I started taking it, and it was just amazing. I've been using it for a while.